There had been a feeling before there had been a word, and somewhere inside that silence there had been a voice. The word that's spoken in 1,000 tongues had carried 1,000 stories, had sung beneath 1,000,000 skies and chased 1,000,000 dreams. But there had been a language no dictionary had ever known, a language born inside the heart, a language felt alone. It had lived inside the falling rain, inside the tears we never showed, inside the smile after the pain, inside every road we walked. And when that voice had finally risen, the silence had disappeared, because Zubeen had sung. His voice had carried something words could never hold, a little bit of sorrow, a little bit of hope, a memory from yesterday, a dream we couldn't let go. And every note had found a heart somewhere in the world. When Zubeen had sung, the heart had needed no translation, no language, no borders, no explanation. One melody had crossed the distance, one voice had touched the soul. He had not simply sung the words, he had made the feeling whole. When Zubeen had sung, we had remembered who we were. We had forgotten every boundary, we had forgotten every fear. The song had ended, but the feeling had remained. Flute slowly enters with the main melody. He had turned a whisper into thunder, and thunder into rain. He had taken someone's loneliness and softened all its pain. He had made a simple melody feel larger than the sky. He had made a wounded heart believe it could still fly. There had been fire in his singing, there had been tenderness too. There had been nights inside his voice and mornings breaking through. Sometimes his voice had sounded like a river running free, sometimes it had sounded like a memory of home. He had sung of love, he had sung of loss, he had sung through joy and pain. And every time the music played, we had felt it all again, because the greatest songs had never belonged to words, they had belonged to the heart. And his heart had been heard. When Zubeen had sung, the whole world had felt closer, the distance had grown smaller, and the lonely had felt stronger. No dictionary had been needed, no translation had been found. His voice had crossed the silence and turned emotion into sound. When Zubeen had sung, 1,000 hearts had answered, 1,000 eyes had carried tears, 1,000 souls had remembered. And even when the final note had slowly faded away, something inside us had continued to sing. Maybe that had been his greatest gift. Not simply the songs he had given us, but the feelings he had left behind. He had given a voice to silence, a melody to memory, a home to emotions we'd never known how to describe. He had made strangers feel connected, he had made distant hearts feel near. And for a moment, when his voice had filled the air, the world had simply listened. His songs had traveled far beyond the moment. His melodies had crossed borders, his memories had crossed generations, and his voice had stayed. When Zubeen had sung, the heart had needed no words. It had understood,
it had remembered,
'cause some voices had been heard.
But Zubeen's voice had been lived.
Some voices had been heard once.
Some voices had been remembered.
Some voices had become part of a generation. But his voice had become a memory that never left. Zubeen,
You had sung the words,
but we had carried the feeling.
the heartbeat had no words,
But it had remembered.